Rural Heritage on RFD TV is brought to you by Rural Heritage Magazine, a bi-monthly magazine featuring articles about farming and logging with draft animal power, small-scale diversified family farming and homesteading, and other aspects of our rich rural heritage. Rural Heritage Magazine, borrowing from yesterday to do the work of today. For subscription information, please call 319-362-3027 or order online at www.ruralheritage.com.
I'm Gene England. This is a cabin that I built resembles the one my great-grandfather built up in Blairsville, Georgia. And he raised 9 children in a building that was 16 by 16 with a loft in it with some bedrooms up there. This morning we have a fire built. It's a little cool, so you can see we have our fire going, and that's how they heated these buildings back in the 1800s. Then we also have our lamp lit so they can see how to eat their breakfast and get out and go to work. They cook their meals on this wood cook stove. The bedroom back here, and we'll move on out now to the blacksmith shop.
Well, I'm Dave Backestow, and we've got a coal fire here going with some bituminous coal, which is soft coal. There are a few things that we could probably show you that you might do around the farm. And these are plow points that they get worn down. And
right here's some that hadn't been burned on.
Okay, that's even better. So they get worn down over time where they're not sharp enough anymore to cut through the dirt. And theoretically, you could grind it down, but then you're losing the metal, which is expensive. Or you could try to file it down, but these are fairly high carbon, and you can't file high carbon steel. And so this is the best way to do it, and it makes the most sense economically. And it'll take a minute here to heat this up, and then when you put this coal on the fire, you see I've got this box full of coal here, and this is called green coal. And you put it along the edge of the fire. You don't dump it on the top of the fire because it's really not going to do anything. It's just going to sit there, and it's going to smoke a lot, and it's not going to help you. So you leave it at the edge of the fire, and it gets cooked. So it kind of cooks it a little bit to turn it into coke, and coke is what all this, the red coals that you see way down in there, that's coke. And basically, by having this on the edge of the hot fire, I'm coking the green coal. Now we're good. Take the rounded edge, kind of like on a ball peen hammer, but this is a different type. Now, to smooth it and dress it up a little bit, I'm going to put it on the flat part. This is called the table of the anvil, and this is the horn of the anvil. Most anvils have 2 holes in them. This is the Hardy hole, and this is the Pritchett hole, and there are implements that you can put in these holes that'll help you with certain different tasks. And we don't really need any of that right now. Now, when you get it pretty good, and I think that's pretty good at this point, you need to cool it down. But if you do it too vigorously, again, it depends on the carbon content. If you have a higher carbon steel and you do it too vigorously, it may crack on you. So you want to just push it down in there and bring it back and wait until the steam goes away. and you want to do it another time, and then you bring it back, and then you just throw it down on the ground to let it cool off, and it'll take probably an hour to cool off all the way before you'd want to touch it. If you had a really, really low carbon steel, a softer steel, like a horseshoe, for instance, then you could just throw it in there and quench it right away, and it wouldn't hurt the crystalline structure at all.
If you enjoy seeing how our ancestors lived during America's rule yesterday, you're going to love looking at these books. Volume 1 is Fieldwork, showing horses and vintage tractors preparing seedbeds, planting, cultivating, and harvesting the crop. Volume 2 shows the work being done in the barn and farmyard, feeding and watering the livestock, getting the crop into the barn, milking the cows, shearing the sheep, and collecting the eggs. In Volume 3, we go inside the home to see the family in the kitchen canning vegetables, in the parlor listening to the radio, and in the dining room for family supper. We also head into town to shop at the general store or visit on the town square on Saturday night. Each book has over 140 large format pages. They sell for $24.95 each, or you can buy 2 for $44.95, or all 3 for $54.95 plus shipping. Call 1-877-647-2452 to order. That's 1-877-647-2452.
Yeah, that didn't do right when I moved that over. That'd be good for the horses. That'd be good for the horses. This corn here is something I raised. It's a Kentucky prolific. I've had the seed about 50 years.
How many?
50.
50?
Yeah. This is a 1913 Meadows Grits mill. We completely rebuilt it, and it has a Farmall BU engine on it. So it's we completely refurbished it, and we make our own cornmeal. We make about 2,000 pounds a year.
So that Farmall engine it's not a tractor engine that's been fitted for this. It was built to do this.
No,
As a stationary power source, or no?
it's a power unit.
Yeah, okay.
The BU was the number they put on the unit for a power unit. And it could have been used on a combine, international combines, and people would take them off and use them as power units. So.
Okay.
Most all old country stores and general merchandise stores would have a few grocery items, and would have a lot of farm equipment. You could buy horse-drawn equipment. And they also had things like one-horse mowing machines. This is one I've completely restored. You can actually pull this with one mule or one horse and mow your hay. Have a cutting disc over here on the outside. It will be pulled with 2 mules or 2 horses. Have a number 10 Oliver turning plow would be pulled with 2 mules with a fault swing on it, which would throw dirt out much better. And you'll see other items. You'll see the men, the neighborhood men sitting on the porch, carrying on the conversation. 2 over there playing checkers. You have to watch them about cheating. And you got a lot of your conversation in your neighborhood news. You would hear about it around the fire or on the front porch in the summer months at a country store. We'll move inside. These 2 ladies they're the storekeeper. This and takes care of tell them about your specials you got.
We have fresh eggs for 5 cents a dozen. We got fresh cheese and sliced bologna, and What else have we got there? Butter, fresh butter.
Now, where the stores normally got their eggs and their butter, they would, neighbors would come in and buy an item, maybe buy sugar and coffee. They'd bring butter and eggs and swap for the, and they didn't have to buy things. You had your candies and things that they sold in the store, a few grocery items. Your bologna would come in a big tube, and a lady might come in and say, I need a dozen slices of bologna. So you put it in this cutter and you slice the bologna. If you had a smaller stick, like salami, you would cut it in that smaller thing here. These are all items you would see in the old country stores. And those are gee whiz teeth hanging up there next to those. Okay, we'll move on out now. We had, here's some of the items that would be sold in the store. This is a fowler. This was used, you could, your row of cotton or corn could be here when it's about this tall, and you could plow it the first time, and you took that sweep off of the front when you did that. This is the first that I've seen that still has the sweep for the front, because it's brand new, it's never been used. And what they would use this for, they'd have that sweep, and when you got your ground smoothed out good, you'd run that down through the field and come back the distance you want your rows. And this thing kind of beds up a little bit of a bed, and you plant your cotton on top of a bed, not down in a furrow. Then when you had to start cultivating it, you'd take that sweep off and straddle the row, and it lets a little dirt fall through here, and it won't cover a plant up. You can take a plant an inch or inch and a half tall, and it'll just let a little fine dirt fall around it. And that was called a fowler. Now, a lot of people will say, I heard it was called a buzzard, but the buzzard had two wings with gee whiz teeth on the back. It did the same thing, but it was made altogether different to what this is. Back in the summer, when it would get up to 98 degrees, you'd come out here and it would always be around 64, 65 degrees. And you would put your potatoes, your canned goods, your items in here, and it'll keep it pretty much the same. When it gets down to zero, for instance, it'll get up to about 40, or get down to about 48 degrees. So from 48 to about 68 degrees. This has 2 foot of dirt on top, well insulated. And in the South, a lot of the people would, if they had a tornado or a storm threat, they'd go to the root cellar. That was the safest place because you were safe in there from a storm. Last week, I decided to build me a fire pit outside of the smokehouse. I use insulated 2-wall pipe to go in it with so you won't have any fire. But I can put my fire and my green hickory in here and let it smoke. And we'll look on the inside.
Hey, I'm Smith Wilson, a friend of Gene's, and I have a smokehouse in Athens, Georgia that we've been using for a number of years. My great-grandfather built it in 1885. It's a 2-story smokehouse. Gene's replicated a single-story one that he grew up with, and it's the same principle. There were 2 ways of smoking, and Gene's sort of showed one. This is a fire pit down here that can be used to smoke. But what this smoking does is create heat, and you actually, when you're smoking, you don't want to create too much heat. It sort of cooks the meat. So he's come up with a system of an outside pit, and it just brings the smoke in, but very little heat at all. Have this box with, obviously it's food grade salt, and you cover it in about an inch. And then typically this is covered up. I just wanted to show the people, but you cover it in about an inch. And over the 6 weeks, osmosis sets in and actually pulls the moisture out of the meat. And periodically you might have to go in there and tap the stuff down because of the moisture that's created in the salt. And at the end of the season, sometimes you'll even see a little redness to the salt. It's pulled out so much. 6 weeks, 8 weeks, depending on the size of the hams. I put in hams that, were real big and left it in 8 weeks, but typically 4 to 6 weeks is enough. You bring it out of here and then hang it. And as I say, we've been through the process of smoking. You smoke with hickory, oak, but not using any kind of pine that have sap and the smell.
Normally after Thanksgiving, around Thanksgiving or shortly after, we would always in the South start killing hogs. And we would, most families, say a family of 6 or 8 people, would normally kill 2 hogs in around Thanksgiving, get 2 of the little big bone guineas and fatten them out and kill them along in February. But on hog killing day was a big event. We usually had a neighbor that came in to help my dad. We would kill the hog, bring it up, lay it on what we call a scrape board, and we'd heat water in the wash pot, and sometimes we had a barrel with a hole dug back in at an angle in the ground, and we'd pour that hot water in there, and we'd dip the hog in it, and have a hook on up in his mouth there that you could pull him back out. 2 men could pretty well drag him around and stick him in the hot water, then lay him on the scrape board, and we'd lay burlap bags on him, and then take more hot water and pour on him. And that would make the hair come loose, and we'd scrape the hair off of the carcass. When you got that out and got him good and clean, then we would take the what we call a hog hanger. Now I made these just out of little old strips, but we normally had about 2 or 3 inch hickory poles. There'd be 3, we'd bore a hole in it, put a bolt in it, put a chain, and put our single tree up there. 2 men would take this and lower it, let it come down, and we'd get it low enough to where we cut the leaders in the hind legs of a hog and hook these hooks into the leaders. And then 2 men would take this and we'd raise the hog back off the ground. You had to really push on it, and you get it up to where his nose was off of the ground about that far. And then you could take the entrails out of the hog. And then when you got that done, we washed him down. We split him down the back and took him and laid him on a table to work it up. And that's where the salt and curing process started. Most one-room schoolhouses they had back in the 1800s in the South and even the North as well normally would have grades 1 through 8, and they normally would have anywhere from 12 to 15 pupil. You might not have but 2 in the first grade, 1 or 2 in the second, and numbers like that. And when they built these buildings, they used up probably about all the funds they had getting a building built. So on Sunday, they would let the church use the same building to have church in on Sunday. If you look up at our sign, Morningside Baptist Church, preacher preaching first and third Sundays. Now the reason we had first and third, he preached somewhere else on the second and fourth. He'd have to do, because they couldn't afford to pay him over 2 Sundays. And on the sign here it has Morningside Schoolhouse grades 1 through 8. And and we didn't have water in the, most of them didn't. If you had a well, you had to draw water, but it shows the water's down at the cabin in the peavy. So we'll move inside.
Welcome to Morningside School. This is a replica of a schoolhouse, a one-room schoolhouse, roughly dating late 1800s, early 1900s. This schoolhouse represents a bygone era. It gives us a glimpse into our own past. The grades 1 through 8 would have been taught by one teacher, probably a young woman who may or may not have graduated from high school recently, boarding at a nearby farmhouse and teaching until she got married.
Our schoolhouse, we had 2 grades in each room. We had advanced a lot from this type of school. And we had a drinking fountain out front, but when the pump would go off, sometimes it'd take 2 or 3 or 4 days to get it fixed. So our teacher would ask us to take the water bucket, go to the neighbor's house, or if you had a well at the schoolhouse, you could draw it, but we always went to the neighbor's house and we got a bucket of water and brought it back, and the teacher would tell us, okay, class, tear a sheet out of your notebook and make a paper cup, because we're gonna give you water. So I'll demonstrate on how we did this. We take a sheet of paper and fold it very evenly. And you want to fold it to about right here. Take this side, fold it. Sometimes you have to adjust it just a little bit. All right, you've got a cup, and it will actually hold water. And you just take it and drink your water out of the cup. Now that paper will stay good for about 3 or 4 cups of water, and then you have to make a new one. But that's how we made paper cups. That's how they were made years ago as well.
This program is available for purchase. To order your copy, please call 319-362-3027 or visit www.ruralheritage.com. Rural Heritage is a bi-monthly magazine dedicated to draft animal farming and logging, as well as other aspects of our rich rural heritage. It is published by Mishka Press, which also offers a complete line of Back to the Land books, DVDs, and calendars. Call or write for a catalog or subscription information, or visit our website at www.ruralheritage.com.